On the evening of January 30th, 2026, Buckingham Palace broke decades of ironclad silence regarding the true extent of the royal family's private property. The statement was brief, surgically worded, and absolutely explosive. Lady Louise Windsor, the quiet 22-year-old granddaughter of Queen Elizabeth II, had officially inherited a secret Scottish estate that most of the world and even most of the family didn't even know existed. They called it the Grey House, a name whispered only in the most exclusive, high-clearance palace circles. It was a property so private and so protected that even the most senior royals had never set foot inside its thick stone walls. But here is where the story takes a dark and dramatic turn. For weeks leading up to this announcement, Queen Camilla and various members of the Parker Bowles family had been waging a savage behind-the-scenes war to claim that very estate for themselves. They had the surveyors, they had the high-priced lawyers, and they had the commercial blueprints. But in the end, they lost everything. What you are about to discover is a saga of inheritance raw power, family betrayal, and one young woman who became the unexpected guardian of the late Queen's most precious and dangerous secrets. This isn't just about land. It's about the final, unanswerable chess move of Elizabeth the Great. To understand the magnitude of this inheritance, we have to go back to 1944, during the darkest and most uncertain chapter of the Second World War. King George VI, facing the existential threat of a Nazi invasion, quietly purchased an estate tucked deep within the rugged cairngorms of the Scottish Highlands. It was the Grey House, and from the very second of its acquisition, it was designed to disappear. There was no listing in the royal registry, no media report, and no ceremonial acknowledgement. For over 80 years, it existed as a shadow property, known to a handful of senior courtiers, and protected by a codename site fee. This wasn't just another drafty castle. It was Queen Elizabeth's soul space. Purchased through a private holding company to avoid the prying eyes of Parliament, it became a place where the Queen could shed the mask of monarchy and simply be Elizabeth the woman. According to those few staff members who were allowed on site, the Queen would vanish there for days, reviewing her red boxes in total isolation. Prince Philip reportedly found the place too remote and cold, and King Charles, shockingly, had never visited the property once in his entire life. This lack of connection became Charles's greatest weakness when Camilla began her campaign to seize it. But the Grey House wasn't just a retreat, it was a vault. Inside those walls were the unfiltered architectures of royal memory. We are talking about handwritten letters, photographic negatives, and voice recordings that were never digitized or catalogued by the official royal archives. There are personal diaries from the 1950s, correspondence with giants like Eisenhower and Mandela, and most mysteriously, 14 sealed audio recordings of the Queen in private dialogue with Winston Churchill and Ronald Reagan. One palace librarian described it as the raw soul of the monarchy itself. Under the Crown Archives Act, a monarch can designate materials as off-limits through a private deed, meaning they belong entirely to the beneficiary and can never be claimed by the state. By naming Lady Louise the heir, the Queen wasn't just giving her a house. She was giving her the keys to the truth of the last century. Louise, at just 22, became the sole keeper of a history that no museum can display and no other monarch can reclaim. The question remains why Louise. The answer lies in the quiet summers of 2019 through 2021. While other royals were chasing headlines or scandals, Louise stayed at Balmoral with her grandmother. She walked with the Queen in the mist, read to her in the private libraries, and helped her sort through papers that were never meant for the public. The Queen saw in Louise a reflection of her own sister, Princess Margaret. The intelligence and the love of history, but without the destructive need for attention. This was a recognition of character over rank. In October 2021, the Queen signed a conditional personal legacy deed. It was a legal fortress with 3 critical stipulations. The estate would transfer only after her funeral. It would be immune to parliamentary oversight. And most pointedly, Queen Camilla and the Parker Bowles descendants were explicitly and permanently excluded from access. This was Clause 31, a legal dagger aimed at the heart of Camilla's future ambitions. Camilla, however, was not one to sit idly by. As early as 2024, she began making discreet inquiries, sensing that certain assets were being withheld. She understood that her public power was fading, and that, to maintain a lasting legacy, she needed to control the family's most potent symbols. During a private audience at Birkhall, she proposed to King Charles that the Grey House be brought under the management of her own charitable foundations. Her pitch was wrapped in the language of cultural heritage and literary retreats. But insiders knew better. Control of the Grey House meant proximity to Balmoral and influence over the Queen's private papers. Camilla had even gone as far as sending surveyors to the Highlands under the guise of an environmental evaluation weeks before she even broached the subject with the King. It was a coordinated, high-stakes campaign to attach the Parker Bowles name to the Queen's most sacred sanctuary. King Charles, caught between his wife and his mother's ghost, did what a king does best: he stalled. He deferred meetings and called for legal reviews of ownership structures that hadn't been touched since 1952. But behind the scenes, the Royal Estate Council was uncovering the ironclad nature of the Queen's private will. On January 12th, in a closed session with his private secretary, Charles finally issued a soft but immovable line. The estate was not available. He didn't mention Louise, and he didn't mention his mother's specific instructions, but the message was final. Camilla left that meeting composed, but sources say she was vibrating with a cold fury. She already suspected that she had been outmaneuvered from beyond the grave. When the palace finally confirmed the inheritance, the Parker Bowles family was hit by a social and financial earthquake. Tom Parker Bowles had already been researching Highland food tourism and heritage partnerships that would have used the Grey House as a luxury backdrop for his artisanal brands. Suddenly those plans evaporated into the thin Scottish air. The message from the late Queen was brutal. She had drawn a circle of protection, and they were firmly on the outside. Phone calls ricocheted between London and Gloucestershire as lawyers were consulted. But the Queen's legal architecture was a fortress. At the center of the storm, Camilla was left to reconcile her years of service with the reality that she was never truly trusted with the monarchy's soul. What the world didn't see was that Louise had been preparing for this stewardship in secret for nearly a year. She had been visiting the Grey House since 2025, arriving in plain clothes and accompanied only by a discreet female protection officer. Locals were told she was doing university research on geographic history, but in reality, she was being trained by retired archivists and legal advisors on how to manage the estate's staff and protect the private titles. This wasn't a gift to be enjoyed. It was a mission to be fulfilled. When the inheritance was activated on January 25th, it wasn't done with a press conference or a new title. It was done with a single line on a government land register. Lady Louise had become more than just a minor royal. She was now legally and symbolically more powerful than the Queen Consort in the dimension of legacy, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to block financial audits of her daughter and protect her from media leaks. Sophie even hired cybersecurity experts to stop drone scans and trail cameras that were being deployed by unknown actors. Many believe were linked to Camilla's camp to find the estate's exact location. And finally, Prince Edward himself refused a personal favor from Camilla to delay the release of the inheritance records. "My daughter will not be a placeholder for your ambitions," he reportedly told her. "You had your turn." The definitive moment of this saga occurred on a quiet January afternoon at Greyfriars Church. Lady Louise walked into the ancient chapel alone. No security, no entourage. But pinned to her lapel was a brooch that sent royal historians into a frenzy. It was an Edwardian silver thistle and Tudor rose design, with a small diamond heart engraved on the underside with the phrase, "For service, not spectacle." This was the private motto the Queen shared only with her most trusted inner circle. Louise wasn't just attending a local service. She was sending a signal that she was no longer hiding. Her speech that day became a viral sensation. She declared that the house she inherited was not a trophy, but a testament to quiet loyalty and private strength. "I will not allow its memory to be rewritten for convenience," she said, looking toward a plaque of her grandmother. The backlash against Camilla was immediate. The British tabloids branded it a crownless coronation for Louise and a total defeat for the Queen Consort. Princess Catherine also played a subtle but vital role, posting a handwritten note on Instagram that emphasized legacy as something one chooses to preserve, not just receive. The post was tagged with Grey House and garnered millions of likes in minutes. St. James's Palace officials were terrified that Louise was creating a shadow narrative that would overshadow even Prince William, but William himself approved of the move. He reportedly told Catherine that Louise was doing what they were all raised to do, only she was doing it better. Camilla's office tried to counter-attack with an initiative called the Crown's Compassion at St. George's Hall, but the timing was seen as desperate. King Charles even delayed his attendance at Camilla's event, a public demotion that signaled the king's own silent alignment with his mother's will. The tension reached its breaking point on January 26th in the Long Gallery at Windsor Castle. Camilla confronted Princess Anne, accusing her of manipulating a child to steal the spotlight. Anne, cool and measured, replied that if the spotlight found Louise, it was because the public saw what Camilla was trying to hide. When Camilla argued that Louise was never meant to be a working royal, Anne delivered the killing blow. "Neither were you, and yet here we are." Louise had powerful allies in this fight. Princess Anne wasn't just supportive. She was the executor who ensured the Grey House staff remained on a private payroll, insulated from the Crown estate. When Camilla tried to contest the inheritance through the privy purse, Anne shut her down with a single devastating sentence: "You do not challenge the last wish of the sovereign, you honor it." Then there was Duchess Sophie Louise's mother. Camilla left the room in a silence that staff described as funeral grade. Within days, Camilla's exhibition was quietly shuttered, and the royal website was updated with a new banner for an archival project curated by Louise and Anne called The Quiet Years. The institution had absorbed Louise's message and erased Camilla's. By February 2026, Lady Louise's name was everywhere. A BBC poll showed that a staggering 71% of the public wanted her to have a formal royal title and full public duties. In Scotland, that number was 84%. King Charles eventually offered her the title of Her Royal Highness Princess Louise, but the offer came with heavy conditions: residing in London and giving up her private life. Louise's response moved the king to tears. Standing on the steps of the Grey House in the Highland snow, she announced the Grey House Initiative, a trust for duty and ethical leadership independent of palace protocol. She declined the HRH title, stating that duty does not require a name, only a heart. She chose to remain simply Lady Louise, the guardian of the Grey House. The story of the Grey House is the story of the monarchy's survival. Queen Elizabeth II didn't just leave property. She built a legal and moral fortress around the future of the crown. She anticipated the commercial vultures and the family rivalries, and she neutralized them years before they could strike. She chose Louise because she saw the willingness to do the quiet work, to catalogue the letters and repair the vaults without a camera watching. This is the silence that preserved the crown. A quality that Elizabeth understood was the rarest and most valuable asset a royal could possess. William and Louise are now the twin pillars of this new moral axis. They represent stewardship over profit and integrity over branding. As we look at the ruins of Camilla's commercial schemes and the empty halls where her legacy centers were supposed to be, we see the true power of a sovereign's will. The Grey House remains windswept and invisible, but its influence is now the foundation of the modern House of Windsor. The voice of Elizabeth II, preserved in those 14 audio recordings, will now guide Louise as she prepares the next generation for the weight of the crown. The Parker Bowles era of influence has been surgically removed, and the monarchy has been returned to the bloodline. In the end, the most powerful inheritance wasn't the 200 acres or the diamond heart brooch. It was the absolute documented certainty that the woman who knew the monarchy best trusted the youngest of the old guard most. The fallout from this betrayal continues to haunt the palace corridors. Camilla remains a figure of intense scrutiny, her every move weighed against the quiet dignity of the granddaughter she tried to sideline. The public has chosen its hero, and it is the young woman who turned down a princess title to protect her grandmother's secrets. Lady Louise Windsor has reminded us all that true royalty isn't about the crown you wear, but the silence you keep and the duty you fulfill when no one is looking. The Grey House stands as a monument to that truth, a fortress of memory in a world of performance. The Queen's final move was indeed perfect, leaving the monarchy not just with a king, but with a guardian. The legal battle over the Southern Orchard Tract and the Dubai-backed culinary centers is now a closed chapter in the royal archives. Tom Parker Bowles has retreated from the public eye, his ambitious Royal Wild brand, a victim of the Queen's anticipatory obstruction clause. This legal masterpiece ensured that no one married into the family after 2010 could ever lay claim to the private sanctuaries of the Windsor bloodline. It was a preemptive strike against the very idea of the monarchy as a hospitality portfolio. Elizabeth always knew who would hold the crown, and she made sure they had the land beneath their feet to stand firm. As the sun sets over the Cairngorms and the Grey House disappears back into the Highland mist, we are left with the image of Louise, Anne and Catherine, the three women who saved the legacy. They are the keepers of the archives and the protectors of the flame. The monarchy is changing, shifting away from the glamour of the red carpet and back toward the quiet strength of the Highlands. Accountability has arrived, and it didn't come from a court or a parliament. It came from a grandmother's love. Lady Louise Windsor is no longer the invisible granddaughter. She is the moral compass of the House of Windsor, and the Grey House is her cathedral. What do you think about the Queen's secret inheritance? Was she right to exclude Camilla and her children so pointedly? Or was this an act of family cruelty? The debate will rage in the comments. But one thing is certain, the Queen's final wishes have been honored, and the future of the monarchy looks steadier than it has in years. Lady Louise has proven that you don't need a crown to be a leader, and you don't need a stage to be heard. You just need the courage to stand by the people who came before you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hearts and the horrors of the British royal family. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue to uncover the secrets they never wanted you to know. The next video on your screen will take you even deeper into the hidden dramas of the palace. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, remember that the most important stories are often the ones told in whispers. Goodbye for now, and keep looking for the truth behind the palace walls. The saga of the Grey House is finished, but the reign of the Guardians is just beginning. Every chest of letters, every audio recording, and every stone of that Scottish estate is now a part of a new history, one written with dignity, patience, and the unbreakable bond of a grandmother and her granddaughter. The silence has been inherited, And in that silence, the monarchy has found its voice, accountability, stewardship, and legacy. These are the new watchwords of the Windsor line, and they are being whispered from the rugged hills of the north to the very heart of London. The chess game is over, the board is clear, and the Queen has won. Stay tuned for more royal revelations.